So welcome everyone to MobiDataLab's first webinar entitled Fostering a Data Sharing Culture for a Better Mobility in Europe. My name is Inês Melifar. I'm a communication manager at F6S, one of the partners of MobiDataLab, and I will be your host for today. Data sharing in the transport and mobility industries has begun to rise in recent years as stakeholders such as transport authorities, operators, and other mobility actors try to address key issues and challenges through cooperation. Fostering such a culture is thus instrumental to have a more sustainable and interconnected Europe based on quality, accessible, and usable mobility data. So before we start, I would like to go through some technical recommendations. So please make sure to have your video and microphone turned off during the presentations. Of course, if you are a speaker, turn them on during your presentation. There will be time for Q&A after the 3 initial presentations and also after the panel discussion. I just ask you to write the questions in advance by using the chat and clearly identify the speaker. Due to time limitation, we will only choose 2 to 3 questions for our speakers. This webinar will be recorded and publicly disseminated. In the chat, you will find more information about the GDPR issues. So this is our agenda for today. We will start with Thierry Chevalier, MobiDataLab's project coordinator from AKKA. We will be learning more about how MobiDataLab is supporting this data sharing culture in Europe. We will then have some key insights on who are the relevant actors for mobility data, how lack of data impacts them and what are their needs, and we will get to know some proposals on how they can collaborate to address those challenges. This will be presented by Stella Nutsu from IAthon. And before our Q&A, we will learn more about the status of the mobility data sharing market, which are the companies, products, and services already operating in Europe. This will be in the voice of Didier Deric from Kizio. And finally, we will be joined by other relevant EU projects in a panel of discussion moderated by Susan Hodley from Polish. Joseph Laborde is a Molière project coordinator from Factual Consulting, and Roberto Trasarti, Big Data project coordinator from CNR ISTI. They will discuss about what a European mobility data space might look like and how their projects could contribute to this with focus on data sharing barriers. I will now give the floor to Thierry Chevalier, MobiDataLab's project coordinator, for the presentation of MobiDataLab's project.
Yes, thank you.
The floor is yours, Thierry.
Thank you, Inês. Well, let me share my screen.
Go ahead.
And good morning to everyone. So, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Thierry Chevalier. So I work for AK Technology. I'm talking to you from Toulouse, south of France, and I'm the project coordinator of MobiDataLab. So I will try to give you an overall presentation of the project quite quickly. I mean, in 10 minutes time. So it's a MobiDataLab in a nutshell, let's say. So what is MobiDataLab? It's a EU-funded project under the Horizon 2020 program. Basically, MobiDataLab is a lab or labs in the plural for prototyping future mobility data sharing cloud solutions. Well, the idea is to make it easy for mobility stakeholders to share data. So we will describe the solution in the following slides. Just to let you know that we started the project last February. It will last until the beginning of 2024. The project is coordinated, sorry, by ACA ourselves, but we have a consortium of 10 partners from both the industry and academic worlds. So they are just distributed across Europe, as you can see, and also in 3 main categories of expertise, let's say. The first category is stakeholder engagement, because MobiDataLab and the lab in general is about organizing innovation sessions. So we have experts in the field like Police, which is a network of public transport authorities and municipalities based in Belgium. We also have F6S, which is the startup network, and also companies which are used to organize meetups, hackathons, and datathons, like Aethon here in Kizio. On the other side, we have also experts in the field of business analysis, legal and governance, and data privacy. These are mainly our academic partners. There is a consortium of universities in Italy, which is ICOR, the University of Leuven, and University of Tarragona in Catalonia. And finally, we have technology providers, like, for instance, the map service providers here, Technology, and Kizio, which is a journey planning service provider, and also the CNR, Aethon, and ourselves in ACA. So what kind of problem does MobiDataLab want to solve? Actually, there are in the transport system more and more data being produced, and quite logically, because there are new mobility services appearing, and these new mobility services involve new actors in the domain. So as there are new data and new actors, everyone agrees that data sharing can unlock new insights and lead to more efficient processes, and why not new products. But however, there is still a lot of reluctance to share data, and for very good reasons, because we have an example here of the main barriers to data sharing. There are privacy concerns, because sharing data may imply having to deal with personal data and compliance with the GDPR, and also regulatory compliance at large, which is a regulation which is always evolving, quite difficult to comply with. There is also for at least for private actors, the risk of losing competitive advantage when sharing data, and also a legitimate fear of losing control of data. And on the technological side of the barriers, there is a lack of cloud solutions and interoperability issues. So our solution we proposed to the European Commission and was accepted is based on 4 pillars of 4 steps. The first one being the constitution of an open knowledge base, well, the state of the art in the field of data sharing, mobility data sharing in particular. The second step of the project will be the prototyping of a transport cloud, which is a federation of cloud services for easing the access to mobility data, at least in Europe. And this transport cloud will be used in and put into practice in the frame of living and virtual labs, that is to say, innovation events involving city, municipalities, regions, and innovators. And in the end, the 4th step is to evaluate the impact of what we did. So if we consider the state of the art, well, it's just a way to build a knowledge base with the aim of answering any question one may ask himself or herself about the different aspects of data sharing and mobility data sharing, whether it is from the legal and governance aspect, data privacy, standards about mobility data sharing, the cloud solutions available, and the use cases related to mobility data sharing. Regarding the proof of value, let's say the transport cloud, it's a prototype platform for searching and fusing multimodal mobility data. And if we go a bit more in depth in what it means, we propose to have a seamless access to resources in the cloud, which implies cloud federation, also a reference data catalog for selected areas, also working on data access services for easing the interoperability, data privacy tools for providing anonymization, and also processors, or data processor for enriching data sets from the geographical or semantical perspective. Well, this platform, and this is one of the main objectives of the project, is not to be put on the shelf, but rather being used in the scope of living and virtual labs. That is to say, innovation events, when we would put together, either physically or virtually, the two main stakeholders we would like to target. That is to say, cities and regions and public transport authorities involved by the police network, which we will kindly ask to provide concrete mobility challenges they face in the organizing transport in their area. And on the other side, the SME, startups, innovators, students involved by F6S to participate and to propose solutions for the concrete mobility challenges through hackathons, datathons, and Codagons participation. We have here a list of what we call the reference group, that is to say the cities and regions which are partners of the project and which we propose to host the labs and the challenges. The fourth step is impact assessment. So there are just five aspects to consider. The first one being the survey about the actors' needs, about which Stella will be talking a bit later, just afterwards. There is also a market analysis, for which we will have also a presentation this morning by Didier Deric from Kizio. There is also a gap analysis between supply and demand, business and revenue models study in the field of mobility data sharing, and the assessment framework. So, well, we propose to start from concrete use cases. So we propose preliminary use cases that will evolve in the course of the project with the feedback from our stakeholders. But to begin, we will start with use cases first for operations. So the mobility data sharing, we will explore in a specific case of optimization of transport flow and the estimated time of arrival. Also, we propose to use open data as a tool for emission reporting, also for analytics and learning, which is a quite wide scope, and which will leave room for the innovators to explore different solutions. Also, use cases of data sharing is reuse of the transport data for improving journey planning services, and also in the same way, improving mobility as a service. Also, we propose to study use cases for research with our group of researchers from academic fields for improving inclusive transport, sustainable transport, and also a specific case of linked open data. Well, that's it for a quick presentation. If you want to contact me, here are my contacts. So now time for me to leave the floor to Stella, I guess.
Thank you, Thierry, for your presentation. Just want to add something. So I forgot to present also the project coordinator of Dataports, Santiago Cáceres, who from ITI. Okay, he will be joining the panel discussion. So I would like now to give the floor to our second speaker, Stella Nuzzo. Go ahead.
Okay, I think that now you can see my screen. Okay. So hello all, yes. Hello, good morning. Hello from Greece and especially from Athens. My name is Stella Nuzzo. I'm a transport engineer working in iPhone engineering, and we're part of this project, this innovative idea, and actually much needed to foster the data sharing culture and the data sharing collaborations. So our main goal is first to identify the actors' needs and the cooperation framework in order to deliver a better product. So as we have, as Thierry also mentioned, data sharing in the transport and mobility industries has begun to rise, but there are still some key issues and challenges that we need to address and we need to identify. So this is also our project goal. We want to foster this data sharing. So our first step is first to identify the main actors that are involved in the data sharing and the actors that are interested to participate in all these activities, and that by participating, their services will be improved, they will optimize their operations and increase the product and the services that they provide. So by doing so, we have identified the actors' needs, their relations, and also have collected information related with the data sharing scenarios. We had four main objectives. The first one is to identify the actors who are interested in the data sharing. Are they already share data, and which is their statement? Then we want to identify the need for data sharing, why someone would want to share the data. By doing so, we have also researched the willingness of actors to collaborate, and also have identified the data sharing opportunities and constraints. So our methodology was first the bibliographical research and the research in the relevant projects, because we wanted all our upcoming steps to be stated from the bibliographical research. Then we executed a Delphi survey, and the Delphi survey was dedicated to experts. Experts coming from the fields of transport and from would be transport service provider, consulting companies. We will see more detail in the upcoming slides. Moreover, we created an innovators questionnaire. The innovators questionnaire was dedicated to people that they use data, but we cannot say that they're experts such as a transport service provider. Having all that results, we want to analyze and identify the needs, the data sharing scenarios, and the important data sets. So first, we executed a Delphi survey. It had 3 rounds. The first round was about the brainstorming, and we want the respondents to feel free and answer open-ended questions, where we collected 50 answers. In the second round, we wanted to narrow down all the responses that we have received from the round 1, and this had been answered from 29 experts. The last round was the third one, where we want the information that had been collected in the round 2 to be rated in a short list. So from the round 3, we had 20 answers. The majority of the panelists had 8 to 15 years of experience, and they were coming from different backgrounds. And the 74% of them were male, and the 24% were female. In the innovators questionnaire, we wanted to gather the view of the relevant stakeholders that they are using data and they have a role in the data sharing environment, but they are not recognized as experts, either due to their expertise or to their role. So in this questionnaire, we had 131 participants. They were innovators, startups, or SMEs that they were familiar with the data. And the majority of them had more than 11 years of experience. So in order to collect all the information, our main step was first to create use cases, 10 generic use cases, which are related with the transport and the mobility challenges. So the panelists were asked to identify from which of them are the most interesting and that they would be willing to participate. So our results showed that the top 3 use cases for data sharing in the data sharing environment were first the real-time data sharing across modes for a better operations, the decision support through data sharing, and a better journey planning through third-party data integration. There was a huge list with the actors that are involved in the data exchange, and a lot of participants, they were free to answer open-ended questions. So as you imagine, many of them will have the same actor but a different name. So after shortlisting them and filtering, we have the top 3 actors for data exchange are the public administrations, the public transport operators, and the mobility service providers. So through the Delphi survey and the innovators questionnaire, we had many types of needs that they were stated. And we wanted to identify which are the most important. So from the challenges that they were described with the panelists and their answers we collect, we can deduct their concerns and needs in terms of data. And these are the 5 key issues, and as also Thierry mentioned before, which is also issues in the data exchange, is first interoperability, meaning that there is an unavailability of data sharing platforms who have a lack of public data repositories and lack of data management support tools. The second most important issue is the reliability, that the data quality and the maturity may be affected, and we're not sure about the actual quality and maturity. And these are affected by the lack of real-time data and the accuracy, because we may have data, but if they're not updated, they're not useful anymore. So it's important to our data to be accurate and updated frequently. Moreover, the security is something that it was stated a lot, meaning that they want to be sure about any external attack or mistrust in the data encryption processes. And of course, a key issue is the policy, meaning that the user data privacy may not allow the user for data acquisition. And this is something that is more often identified in the private organization. The last key issue is the lack of cooperation culture, that we have, there is a lack of understanding about the value of the real-time data. A lot of organizations are afraid and they mistrust the other organization because they believe that if they share the data, they will give an edge to a competitor. So this is also based in the fact that there is not a clear business model. Again, through our Delphi survey and the innovators questionnaire, the participants were asked about which are the most important data sets. And we see that the most important data sets are the ones that are related with the real-time data. These are the real-time demand in public and private transport, the demand analysis through mobility habits, the geolocation data on the parking availability. It's the real-time schedule updates in the public transport, any delay and disruption in the public in the public transport, and the traffic data. So we've been all in the COVID-19 situation, and we see that there is a rise of technology during this period, and the demand for updated and accurate information has been increased a lot because all the users want to stay informed. So it is very important to address transportation challenges holistically. And holistically, we mean that all the stakeholders that are involved and that are included in the demand to facilitate the cooperation between stakeholders need to have a role. And this may be the society association, NGOs, small firms, the open data, the open hardware. All these actors need to have an important role in order to drive innovation and create sustainable mobility frameworks. So our proposed solution is a living lab approach where all the stakeholders can cooperate through a virtual environment. So our next goal was to create a scenario which would be relevant in a living lab. In a scenario, in a data sharing scenario where all the actors can gain and they would know why they participate and how they can participate. So the one scenario created was in the context that a transport service provider and trip planners in the private and the public sector could improve their offerings and consequently deliver better services to the traveling public. So the main question that arises related to this scenario is, what data can be used in order to improve our services, and how data can be used, and from which actors are involved?
Estella, we are having some trouble hearing you.
Is it better now?
and you froze.
Yes, the
Can
sound
you
is
hear me
very
still?
good.
No problem from my side.
No problem, no either.
Okay.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. Okay, so I will move on. And so related with our scenarios, we have we are in the real-time data sharing across modes for better operation. So what we can gain, we can share the real-time demand in public and private transport. And the TSPs can foster the real-time demand data to share the real-time demand data in order to allow third parties to consume that data and provide it value to the traveling public. Also, the planning services need to have access to this data to produce valuable information to their customers. And all the actors, including also the region, the cities and municipalities, need to both share and access in this data because they are related with their ecosystem and the transport solutions that they want to provide. Moreover, the demand analysis through mobility hubs is a type of data that should be shared in the case of a public actor wants to improve the services and manage disruptions. The geolocation data on the parking availability is something really important for a navigation service provider because it's part of their offering. And if they want to enhance the traveling experience and expand it, this information is really important. Moreover, the transport service providers would, of course, know more about the public availability, and this is also important for them if they want to add an extra bus or to check the demand. Regarding the real-time schedule updates in the public transport, this type of data helps the operator to understand the traffic situation in order to be able to adjust their own operations and activities and minimize any disruptions and increase the satisfaction of the passenger. Therefore, TSPs should share data, in order to offer a real-time service to the citizens. We have the delays and disruptions data, which is, of course, similar to the schedule updates, but also important. And these types of data can be used to avoid the large number of dissatisfied passengers. And also the delays on the transport could be minimized or more fleet could be added. The last data set that is important in this scenario is the traffic data, which is crucial for the traveling public in order to enhance their journey, and therefore actors that generate this type of data are motivated to share it in third parties. So in this scenario, having in mind the involved actors that are participating are the transport service providers, the trip planning services, the traffic management center, also micromobility operators, which is something that probably we've never thought, or it's more like it's a trend that is more often seen the last years. Of course, the logistics and the freight transport is something important, so the logistic operators could gain as well. We have the navigation service providers and other actors that coming from different sectors, such as the emergency services or airlines and airports, which is an activity that is not much related with our everyday life. Moreover, we have the ride-sharing operators, parking operators, road operators, the infrastructure managers, mobile phone operators, because as we know, the technology and the mobile phone connection is something that is much related with the data sharing, because if I don't have a good connection, how I can share my data? Of course, and this is also something that we have in mind, and this is also the purpose of the reference group. Regions, cities, municipalities, and transport authorities are really important in order to create a living lab and to foster the data sharing. These actors may be a host for innovation and new ideas and solutions. Last but not least, we have the planning consultancies, agencies, research centers, and also whether data providers and mass integrators are important for our scenario. You can find more information about our work. We have also created another 2 data sharing scenarios This may be found in deliverable 3.1, and more information also can be found in our website, which is the MobiDataLab.eu. And that's all from my side. Thank you for your attention. If you have any question or something else, you can state it in the chat, and of course, send me an email.
Thank you, Stella, for your presentation. I was actually going to say that, reminding people that after the next presentation, we will have a Q&A time. So please write the question in the chat and specify the speaker that the question is for. And I will now give the floor to our third speaker, Didier Deric. The floor is yours.
Yes, hi everyone. Can you see me and hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, so I will share my screen. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So hi everyone. So I am Didier Deric. I work at Kizio as a senior project manager. So I am following all activities within Kizio related to the MobiDataLab project. And today I will present the market analysis study that we have conducted in the course of this project. So this is, it will be a quick highlight on what we did and what are our main results. So I will not enter, of course, into every detail, the objective being to present the main findings of this study. So let's start with the objectives of the study, actually. So the objective of the task was to perform a market analysis on the data sharing products and services. So we compared the markets and the needs and that we will present later on. And then we defined the scope of what could be business models and market for the future transport cloud. So the main objectives to reassess. So firstly, to identify when we talk about mobility data, which type of data we are talking about, which type of digital services that could have an impact on the creation of innovative digital services. Second objective, to monitor the market and to identify a list of products and services for transport sharing. And then to analyze the market and define the segments, the characterizing elements of this market. So how we proceeded to achieve this. So first of all, we had a look at other studies that has been made on this field. So there were not so many studies actually, but there were some. So we analyzed all of this. And we also analyzed precisely 37 digital products and platforms that are related to transport data sharing. So we made that analysis through desk research, analyzing the content available online, but we also asked some companies to fill in a survey. And we also had contacts with some of these companies to analyze a little bit more in detail what they did. And as a result, we come up with the identification of 9 data types that are particularly relevant when it comes to transport data sharing. And we also identified the main components of the mobility data sharing value chain that we can use to differentiate the offerings of these companies. And finally, in this study, we detailed the 37 products, services, and platforms that we analyzed for this study. So here I just a table listing there's 37 platforms and data services. So certainly you already know some of the names here, So of course, I will not detail each of these platforms in this presentation. I will just directly present the consolidated results of the study, the main findings of the study that I will describe in the next slide, but just to give you a quick idea of which kind of platform we analyzed. If you want, of course, to get the detail of each of these platforms, you can refer to the document which is available in the MobiDataLab website. So let's start with the findings of the study. So the first finding is that the availability of data is quite heterogeneous. You can see on the left 9 data types that we found particularly relevant for defining the scope of mobility data sharing. So vehicle location, environment, mapping, payment, vehicle usage, static infrastructure, dynamic infrastructure, ticketing, and user-generating content. So the data types that have been highlighted in green are the ones that we could find the most frequently. Vehicle location, mapping, and static infrastructure. So these kind of data are pretty well covered in the products and services that we analyze. On the contrary, payment and ticketing data are less easily available. They are less traded as a data source, and it's difficult to find any data source related to ticketing in particular. So when it comes to looking at the companies that are using and training the data, we saw that some companies act as intermediaries. So they offer a possibility for companies to offer the data and then for others to consume it. Other companies leverage their proprietary data. So the data that they have access to with their directly, for example, with their connected device. And also, we saw that some companies position themselves as aggregators for the same type of data. For example, Fluctuo is a company that aggregates real-time data of all available micro-mobility service providers in France, almost all. So the second finding, it is a lack of transport mode integration. So what we noticed is that there is 2 ecosystems of data sharing, basically, that have evolved almost independently without being that much connected. So the first one, it is a connected car data ecosystem, which is quite flourishing, actually. We have a lot of companies that generate that kind of data, that aggregate them or that offer some analytics services around the connected car. And on the other side, there is companies that are evolving in the public transport ecosystem. So the integration between private connected car data and public transport data is not that easy to establish. Also, there is some effort on this side. For example, Kizio, which is a company I work for, deals mainly with public transport data, but we are able to interconnect with companies like here, for example, to take into account road traffic when computing multimodal transport journeys, combining both public transport and individual core. Then in this market analysis study, we try to assess the level of competition between those companies. So we can look at the value chain perspective. So you can see on the left the different steps that we used: data generation, collection, analysis, and companies that act as exchange companies. So for each of the steps, we can see a lot of competition occurring. So a lot of competition between data generators. For example, for mobility data, we can see that car manufacturers are competing with telecommunication companies to provide mobility information. This is the same for cartographic data providers that are competing on the mapping offer, and for analytics software providers that are also competing in similar value propositions for the same type of client. So the first level of competition between all these actors is within each of this type of value proposition. The second layer of competition is that some companies have positioned as aggregators, and they are including several different steps of this value chain, from generation to analysis through collection. So we identified different positioning. Some are proprietary, for example. They are relying only on the data they have direct access to. So here we give GeoTab as an example. And other company mix their own data with other data like here. And finally, there is other companies that are aggregating different sources of data to provide a value-added service like Mapbox, Carto, and Inrix. So next comment on this market study is that we did see different types of data sharing systems used by these companies. So firstly, there is companies that are using free and open source software. So of course, today, a lot of companies are using open source software and using open data. Some of them are even using open data sets. So this is something that is particularly important, I think, in the public transport area, where there is a strong focus on the openness of data in particular. So in France and other countries, for example, there is laws that force municipalities and areas to open their public transport data. And also, these municipalities are often keen to use open source software. There is also some collaboration between companies when some of them sell data to others. So here it was pretty difficult actually to have a clear view on this, because this kind of informations are usually private and not so often public. Not many companies are publicly disclosing the kind of deal they have with other companies. So there is certainly more to analyze here, but it was difficult to get this kind of private information. And interestingly, we also observe that there is some data exchanges that are not monetized, that are not where data is not traded against money, but against something else. So one example here is a connected cities program by Waze. So Waze provides cities with aggregated data, and in return, they are asking the cities to provide them with real-time data, for example, on civil works. So this is very interesting when this kind of data is not public yet. So it's a kind of a win-win agreement between the Waze and the cities. So what are the next steps? So now that we identified these data types and these market actors, now that we conducted this market analysis study, what we will do is now explore the possible business models for the future transport cloud. This is actually the logical next step, because having done that study, we identified some business opportunities, and also we identified the business constraints of the players at stake. Just to make it clear, the business models that I am talking about here, they should apply to the future, what we call the future transport cloud. So it is not the prototype that will be put in place for the hackathon and datathon in 2023. The objective here is really to prepare the future and to figure out how such a platform like the future transport cloud could be economically viable for all actors. So we already started working on this task. So there is a first draft with 5 possible archetypal business models for the future transport cloud. So I will not enter into the detail here since it is a work in progress. It is the opportunity to inform you that we may come back to you for interviews. If you participate to this webinar, you are certainly interested in this area, in this topic. So we would like to collect your feedback on what could be the possible business models of this future transport cloud. So these interviews are about to start in the coming weeks, so don't be surprised if you receive an email. It should be from Luis David Benayer that actually conducted the study for the project. And the objective being to collect your feedback and then to define the key conditions for each business model, and the final objective being to synthesize our findings and deliver the final version of this document by April next year. So this is just a quick draft of the planning to tell you where we are actually. So that's all for me. So thank you very much to listening to this very quick overview of this study. As I mentioned, if you want to have more detailed information, you can refer to the documents that are already available on the MobiDataLab website or knowledge base. And if you have any questions, I will do my best to answer them.
Thank you so much, Didier. So right now we have some time for Q&A. If we don't have any questions, we will move on to the panel of discussion. So if you have any questions, please use the chat and clearly identify the speaker. Again, if we don't have any questions, we will move on. Just give it some time if someone wants to ask a question.
Oh, just not maybe Thierry Chevalier speaking.
Yes.
Not a question, but just a comment about the report which is available on the website. Actually, there are deliverables. So these 2 presentations by Stella and Didier are a lot more detailed in corresponding deliverables, which are not yet made available on the website, but which will be made available as soon as the documents are approved by the European Commission. So for the time being, the link is quite synthetic. I mean, the content that we can find on the website. But if you, we will keep you informed when the deliverables will be made public.
Thank you, Thierry. Thank you very much. Well, it seems that everything was quite clear for the presentations because there are no questions. If you do have them, okay, I think we have one question. So is the project following current EU policy discussions on an European mobility data space in order to feed into these discussions and vice versa? This is from Tom Antonison, this question.
I can take one also.
Go ahead.
Yes, we exchanged with policy officers for the data spaces for AI. Well, the project is not really related with AI. However, we follow the data space initiatives in the architecture definition. So that's mainly taken into consideration for the architecture dossier writing that we are currently doing, and which we did not present in this webinar, but maybe the next one. So, for instance, we analyzed the IDSA initiative, International Data Space architecture definition, and also Gaia X in particular. So, well, we follow this, but yet we don't have so much to communicate about, unfortunately.
Thank you, Thierry. And thank you for your question, Tom. So now it's time for us to go to the panel discussion, moderated by Susan Hoadley from Polish, that counts with the participation of other 3 EU projects that also tackle and try to address the challenge of data sharing in Europe. So I would like to give the floor to Suzanne, to Joseph Laborda, to Roberto Trasarti, and to Santiago Cáceres.
So good morning. Thank you, Ines, and good morning from my side. So Suzanne Hoadley from Polis, based in Brussels. So Polis is a partner in the project. And I'm delighted to have with us today 3 European projects that are dealing with data sharing. So MobiDataLab has been in contact with these projects over the last couple of months to understand what the respective projects are working on, where there are commonalities, and to see where there is potential for creating synergies. So we've seen that there are some common research areas, for instance, in relation to the regulatory and legal issues. There are some common tasks, such as the organization of datathons and hackathons. And we also understand that some of the projects are dealing with blockchain. I don't think we're dealing with that within MobiDataLab specifically, but a couple of the other projects are. So we are planning to cooperate with with these projects. So for instance, on communication matters, we're going to be comparing findings from some of the research that's been undertaken in the projects. For instance, on user needs and potentially sharing ideas about business and revenue models. So for this, the next 30 minutes or so, we are going to have firstly a short introduction to each of the projects. And then we will have hopefully a discussion about what are some of the challenges to data sharing within the respective communities or sectors that we represent. How can these challenges be tackled? And then, time allowing, hopefully we can talk a little bit about what are our expectations from this mobility data space, or what sort of recommendations we would like to make to the European Commission. So first, I would like to invite our first speaker up, which is, well, maybe we can start with the Molière project. And I would like to invite Josep Laborda from Factual Consulting to introduce us very quickly to this project.
Okay, thank you very much, Suzanne. A pleasure to be here with you today. Let me share my screen to present you the Molière project. Do you see now my screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I'm Josep Laborda. I'm from Factual. Factual is an innovation consultancy focused on mobility. We're based in Barcelona. And among many other things, I'm also the coordinator of the EU-funded project Molière. Molière is funded by, in particular, the European Union Agency for the Space Program under an Horizon 2020 program. It's an innovation action, meaning that we are very market oriented. We are aiming less at theoretical approach to mobility data sharing, although we are touching many of the aspects that you guys at the MobiDataLab project are addressing as regards, technicalities, business models, and so on. But we're putting great effort into once data is available, making sure that it translates into actual use cases that deliver an added value to the market, to some of the agents involved in these use cases through demonstrations. So this is not to say that we are not covering all of the user requirements, market analysis, and everything as the MobiDataLab project is doing. but we put in great effort into, go to market and tangible applications leveraging mobility data. The project started almost 1 year ago, and it will last until end of next year. So we have a well-balanced consortium with partners from mainly Barcelona, where we are factually the coordinator. There is Keita, which is a technological company aimed at making sure that the pilots actually work, leveraging data from what we call the mobility data marketplace that I'm going to introduce in a moment. We have Carnet, which is an organization that aggregates different partners that are in the mobility ecosystem at local level. We have the Polytechnic University of Catalonia for the more academic approach and scientific approach to the topics that we are addressing. And we have the ATM, so the Metropolitan Transport Authority of Barcelona, as a very important, one of the most important public transport and mobility agents in our country, in Catalonia. Then we have Osborne Clark, based in Belgium. They are taking care of one very important aspect of mobility data sharing, which is ensuring that all related legal aspects, GDPR, etc., are well covered, are well addressed, and privacy and everything is tackled correctly, which is extremely important. We have DOT. This is a micromobility operator with headquarters in Holland, in Amsterdam, who make a very intensive use of mobility data for their operations, which is pretty obvious. Octo Telematics is they are in this project providing an onboard unit that, when retrofitted into existing fleets of vehicles, it produces mainly geolocation data and all other types of data as well, which can be processed. And in our case, it will be uploaded to the mobility data marketplace to be processed. And last but not least, we have IOMOB. This is a startup based in Estonia. They are also very present in Spain, in Barcelona, but they were founded in Estonia, and they basically take care of the technological platform behind Molia, which is, in short, and in a nutshell, I mean, our main ambition in this project is to build one of the world's best open data commons for mobility services, with the particularity, as Susanne already introduced, that for everything that deals with the governance of the platform, so how data is managed, exchanged, shared, who has access to which sets of data, under which conditions, under which safety frameworks and everything, all of these extremely important processes, we are going to address them and handle them by using blockchain technology. That's one particularity of our project. And the second singularity of our project, if I may, which is not that particular, let me say, but still we want to give a lot of relevance to those data where we have a geolocation component attached to it, so a latitude, longitude, identifying where a particular vehicle or end user is at any given moment. Because we are funded by the USPA, we want to make sure and raise visibility over the fact that whenever geolocation is involved, which is in most of the cases in mobility for obvious reasons, we make sure that Galileo satellite constellation is being used together with the ubiquitous and very well-known GPS and other systems as well. Okay. So we have 4 goals, high-level objectives in the project. That one is fuel mobility as a service platforms with meaningful data, quality data, where there is, as I said, a geolocation component provided by Galileo, in order to develop use cases where we improve road safety and we increase sustainability of those mobility services by leveraging data. We also aim to enable use cases whenever payment is involved the trust on authenticated Galileo geopositioning data that cannot be tampered, that is reliable, that is trustable. And last but not least, and that's very important for us, we aim through the availability of data, through very particular use cases that make use of data, and nudge a substantial behavioral change from end users towards more sustainable mobility choices. So that's it for the moment. I don't want to take much time of you, and I'm very much willing to address any question from the audience.
Okay, thank you, Josep. Thank you for keeping it short and for highlighting the main differences with MobiDataLab, and very good to see that nudging behavior change is an important goal. That's very important for the community that Polis represents, which is local authorities. So moving on to our second project, so the data port project, and to Santiago Caceres. I hope I pronounced your name correctly.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm going to share my screen, just a second. Okay, so I hope you can see my screen and hear me well. So I am Santiago Cáceres, a project coordinator from Dataports. I'm from Valencia, Spain, ITI, which is a IT research center in Spain. So first of all, thank you very much to the MobiDataLab team for giving me the opportunity to present here at Dataports and to discuss with you the European challenges in data sharing and trading. So it's a pleasure. And I'm going to give a very, very brief introduction to the project just to set the scene. So I will keep it very short, okay? So first of all, a little bit of context about Dataports. So Dataports stands for a data platform for the connection of cognitive ports. So what Dataports stands is for the European modern seaports. So ports in Europe are a very complex ecosystem. There are many entities working nowadays all together on a daily basis, supporting all the logistic supply chain, okay? And most of the times they have their own digital assets, their own servers, their own cloud infrastructure. Of course, they do share some information to the port community systems, which is a system that they use mainly to exchange data, but this is really limited, okay? So they see this more as a removal of the paper administrative documents, more than a powerful tool that can probably just have real-time information about their assets and how things are behaving in the port. So to answer these challenges is what Dataports is. And the main thing that we want to make is to take advantage of the huge amount of data generated in these modern seaports. And how do we extract this data? So we are delivering an industrial data platform where we will combine all the different data sources from the entities working in the port. So we are mainly working with private data inside the port, combined with some open source or open data that's available, okay? And we have the final aim to improve existing logistic processes in the port. And on the top of that platform, we are going to develop what we call cognitive applications. These are artificial intelligence-based applications that mainly will help in the daily activities of the ones taking decisions in the port to make better decisions, who will forecast what is happening in the port, etc. And if we introduce such a new tool, we of course we have to look how we make all people, all the stakeholders involved in this industrial platform take benefit out of it. So we are having some research on new business models and exploitation paths. Okay, so we are having pilots of this platform in two relevant seaports in Europe. One is in Valencia, in Spain, the East Coast, and the other one is in Thessaloniki, in Greece. Okay. It was mentioned also at the start of these presentations the importance of the interoperability. So we have a semantic approach for data sharing. What we are doing here is to provide a common schema for data to be shared between the ports. Of course, we are not inventing here nothing new. We are relying on best practices and on standards, and to build this common schema, and also providing the tools so everyone speaks the same language and the data can be useful. As I mentioned previously, we have services related to artificial intelligence. We are also developing a data governance framework, which I believe is pretty similar to the Molière project, which I just presented, because we are relying here on a blockchain network. So you can say, or data owners and data providers can explicitly identify the data, what the data is about, who can use the data, for which purpose, during which time, etc. So we rely here on this data governance framework. We are providing our architecture, engineering methodology and tools to support all the platform. So we are making, and it was also mentioned in the previous presentations, we are also making use of IDS, some of the IDS components. Okay, we are not completely IDS compliant, I would say, but we are IDS friendly. We are not certified or something like that, but we share the same the same purpose of IDAs and take lots of things for the IDS reference architecture model. And of course, we are creating impact, like in this workshop. And as I mentioned, we are researching on new collaboration paths, business frameworks, etc. And just to finish my presentations, we are a 2 years project now. We started January last year. We are ending next year, December. So we have some preliminary results that I invite you to take a look if you have curiosity or you are interested in. I provided here a couple of links. So we developed our first version of the platform already summer this year, and we create a development portal where we explain in detail all the components that are available, all the tools that we have delivered. So you have the link on the right side, and also all of our public deliverables are in the website. Okay. So with this, I finish my presentation. Thanks very much, and I hope so we keep time for the rest, for the discussions. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Santiago. Yeah, so thank you for keeping your presentation short, and we move to our final project, which is the So Big Data project, and to Roberto Trezzati.
Hi, everybody. I'll try to keep it as short as possible. Let me share the screen. Okay. Okay, I will go very fast on slides, but let me present you the MobiData++ project, and which is the second project about the research infrastructure that we are building. The first one was started in 2015, and the second one started in 2020. And actually, the general idea of the MobiData research infrastructure is to build an open ecosystem for the sharing of data and methodology, and in general to realize the open science idea over social mining. So actually in this second project, we are 31 partners, so many people all around Europe contributing with their experience and in their research fields. And the general, as I said, the general objective is to build this toolbox of social mining methodologies, and in order to process data of various kind, usually, I mean, social big data in general. We are approaching it with the idea of combining data-driven model and model-driven analytical approaches, let's say, to answer to research question like what is, what if. And we are addressing in the research infrastructure those 6 different research fields, let's say, that we call exploratories, which goes from social debates to demography to sustainable city of citizen, which probably will be the most similar to your topics, because it's about the creation of models for the mobility in a city or larger areas, actually, and with a perspective of sustainable activities. There is also migration study, which is always again mobility, but on a larger scale, considering the movement of people between countries for I mean, many reasons. I mean, it's not the migration from places, poor places to richer places, but also the migration, for example, of researchers, let's say, between countries in Europe and outside of Europe. This is also the social impact on AI and explainable machine learning and sport data science, which are other two topics. I will go very fast on this. The only last thing is that we are trying to use the ONU objectives for the future developing as a base of our research. The idea is that we are trying to progress in giving answer to those specific objectives. We do all this research and we provide those tools always with the background of an ethical and legal perspective. First of all, because we must do it from the legal point of view in order to share data or to have collaboration between different partners, but also because we strongly believe that the ethical point of view is not something that should be on the last step before publishing or something like that, but something that can be part of the technical aspect and the actual application of the methods and the analysis of data. So we provide some tools also in the research infrastructure in order to understand and to build this idea of responsible data science. I will go very fast on this, saying that. Yes, sorry.
Sorry.
Okay, so that we as a research infrastructure, actually we are doing this not by ourselves. Clearly we are not an island. So we are interconnected with several other platforms for the open data and the open access to computational resources in general, and but also with other research infrastructure that are providing services. So the idea is to go toward a community federation of research infrastructure in Europe, which tackle different aspects, as well as other projects. I mean, we are giving toolbox and tools for other projects to use the services that we are providing. So we are interconnected with several other projects that use MobiData as a repository of their methods or their data, or to perform experiment on the computational facilities that we provide. Last things I see. Okay, go visit MobiData. Actually, you will see also a catalog with many datasets or methods shared, and see how we describe them with the metadata that we use to describe the items. Last things that we providing some computational resources. We are providing also specific libraries for developed by our researchers. So one of these is this Shikit Mobility, which is a library to tackle mobility data in an easy way. That's it. Finished.
Thank you, Roberto. Thank you for keeping it short. I'm sure you and the other panelists have more information to share about the project, but we don't have time today. But you provided the link of the website. So Josep, if you could switch on your camera now. So we have just over 10 minutes left for some discussion and hopefully some questions to the audience. So invitation to members of the audience, please put your questions in the chat box. So the first question that I want to put to you, the first issue is about what do you see as being the main barriers to data sharing coming from your community, from your sector, or from your experience of working in the data space. And I'm going to take the prerogative of being moderator to maybe share some personal views about what I see as the main data sharing barriers for the community that Polis represents, which are local authorities, local governments, so city and regional authorities. So, you know, this local government, they're both data producers, they produce a lot of data, and they also consume data. So that they are customers of data coming from third parties. So when it comes to actually the data they produce, they share it through open data. And we know that local government, I think we all agree that they're really embracing open data, but they do that on a best effort basis. So, you know, the data they make available, the quality of that data is determined by the resources they have. But, you know, I think it should be noted that some public authorities have adopted a data sharing by default or open data by default, obviously with exceptions. They're also big users of mobility data, so they're customers. They acquire that through, for instance, mandatory data sharing contracts, you know, with public transport operators, e-scooter operators, or they procure it from the market. So they might procure one-off data sets for traffic or travel analysis, or recurrent data sets through data as a service type contracts, for instance, floating vehicle data. So they're very active in the data space. But what I see as the three main challenges is cost. You know, it always comes down to money at the end of the day. When it comes to open data, you know, there is a cost involved in sustaining open data and the data sets that are behind it. And we know that there is more demand for data from public authorities and to quality data. And of course, there's a cost in procuring data from the market. And in my conversations with cities over the years, they have, you know, identified that as being a challenge, that it is quite expensive to get buy data from the market. The second challenge is skills. So even though they have a lot of data, there's potentially a lot of data that they could also procure. They don't necessarily have the skill set to be able to make effective use of that data. And then the third challenge I see, which Roberto mentioned, and that was data privacy and GDPR. I see this as sometimes a barrier to data sharing. So for instance, there is a lot of demand from the research community for data that's held by public authorities. You know, public authorities, they open data, but this is non-personal data. But they also have a lot of data that they can't share because it might not be personal, but it could be personally identifiable. And so we need to try and find ways to enable this data sharing to happen whilst respecting GDPR. And I know there are some very interesting examples coming from Brussels and Lisbon about how they're managing to work with the research sector. Anyway, so that's from the local authority side. So maybe we can start with Josep. What are your views on this?
Well, thank you, Susan. You made a very complete overview on a number of topics that I intended to raise myself. So I will make it shorter by saying that I totally agree with the points that you mentioned and that you raised as important. We are also facing the same challenges when interfacing with public authorities, liaising with private authorities. And I believe that this implies one aspect that I think is quite important, and to some extent it is quite abstract as well, which is enabling trust. So what actually is trust? Not trust. You can trust someone because you know how this person behaves and what is his or her background or whatever, right? But when it comes to exchanging data through platforms, when this data comes with a number of implications that might involve legal aspects, GDPR, and also, let me add, not only privacy issues, but also competitive issues. What we see is that private mobility operators are quite reluctant to share their operational data with some level of detail, because they have a fear that such data could eventually be used by their competitors to gain some insight and some understanding how they operate their fleets or their services. So to derive competitive, sensitive information, not data. I'm just referring to information, and there's information. There's two levels here: data and information. So data per se, if not processed correctly, and if data does not come with enough quality and it can be, combined with other sources of data, cannot be turned into actual insights and actual information that is where the value is, right? So in short, trust is difficult. Trust can be reached by following different strategies, from being when it refers to public authorities, which have the mandate and the authority to request private mobility operators deploying their services in the public space. They can request them to provide data, right? However, we've seen many examples whenever this occurs with different levels of mandating such a requirement to share data. It comes with reluctance and with some friction with these operators not willing to share too much data. And just to finish, we've seen lots of controversy with the mobility data specification being launched in Los Angeles and being adopted by, or at least analyzed by, many public authorities also in Europe. And there is I would say, I always call it the European chapter of MDS, which is the city data specification, city data standard for mobility, which is a very interesting initiative being launched from Europe, which is in a way our interpretation in Europe of the MDS, paying a lot of care and attention to the GDPR requirements, which are very stringent.
Okay, thank you, Josep. So you identified trust. That's certainly something that we've identified within a project. I wonder if that's not more on a B2B level, because I can understand it's very sensitive on a B2G. Yeah, anyway, to be discussed further. So now moving on then to Santiago from the Seaports perspective.
Yeah, what to say? I am completely aligned with both of you. It was trust in my top my top issue here. So how you build trust in data ports? I mean, we are mostly dealing with private organizations, so they are very sensitive. At the end, it's their know-how in the day-to-day. They are very afraid of sharing this. They want to have total control, and all the means that you can provide them, which builds trust at the end. It's always welcome, and of course in data ports we are providing, for example, data governance services. I mean, they have this is just a small step to build trust, but there are others. I mean, you have to take care of the security, personal relationships, etc. To add also to this, I would like to highlight in a more technical view the interoperability and integration from different data sources. So you want to extract information, you go to the real world to extract this data, you're going to find out that data is really heterogeneous in terms of quality, of format, of velocity, of everything. So there is huge work there and huge cost to achieve these interoperability issues, to overcome these interoperability issues. And just to add more, I mean, these are not on the top. The top is that what you mentioned, honestly. I just wanted to add more food for feed. Okay, so the scalability issues. So if we need to share data for a better performance on global operations or between verticals of different, I mean, between tourism and public transport or industry 4.0, I mean, all of them are interconnected. If you have to grow this and at the same time keep control of data, this is a huge challenge. Okay, so technically and not technically. Okay, and you already mentioned all the GDPR stuff. I mean, I also see that, for example, for SMEs, they perceive some regulatory prohibitions that they cannot afford to invest. I mean, they see some issues there, and probably they are afraid of sharing, because I don't know if I see the value of sharing data and information, but I mean, I don't know if this is legal or illegal, or I'm making something wrong, so I don't do it and I stop here. So that's something that I think it's worth to mention. Yeah. And that's it from my side.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, you've made some really good points about the data sharing between the verticals. I think that's really the next step. We have to get the data sharing within the verticals. About SMEs, you know, do they have the skills? Do they have the resources to embark on this? And, you know, are they allowed to do this? I mean, these are things I've also heard from local authorities, especially the smaller ones. They're just not sure whether, you know, if they open up data or if they procure data, is it compliant with GDPR? So there's a lot of uncertainty there. And we'll take one, yeah, so moving to our last speaker, to Roberto, what's your take on this from the researcher's perspective?
So clearly I agree with my colleagues in all the points, and I find those points very interesting, and we need to stay here talking at least 1 other hour, but let me keep it short. Let's say that we tackle in big data, from the big data perspective, actually we tackle those problems clearly for not only mobility, but for other many fields. And I agree that the point is the trust that we as researchers may have over private companies. For example, we are tackling mostly with private companies with producing data for mobility, like optotelematics, for example, or telecommunication companies producing the CDR data. So actually what our approach was to, we can share this data publicly. So let's describe those data with metadata and put them on the catalog so the people can find them. I mean, at least who has the access to this data. And then let's say that be a sort of third parties for those researchers in order to make the bridge between the private company, which trust us by years of collaboration, and new researchers that want to develop their methodologies. We found that this is a very good way of approaching things, because in this way we enable, let's say, new research on this data, and clearly the private company will get the results and see that they can develop new things. So they see the values of letting other people using their data also for their purpose, always with this idea of someone who is trusted in the middle, which ensure that privacy preserving methodologies are applied on the data, and there will be no problems of identification of the user, but also that make the steps of, for example, understanding which is the right aggregation level of the data which is needed, because usually this private company has raw data, which is extremely precise and dangerous, let's say, from the privacy point of view. And the other side, there is a researcher. We for sure will love to have raw data, but for the actual objective, sometimes a certain level of aggregation is enough. And performing privacy preserving methodology or risk analysis on that level of aggregation makes the data much easier to share and to convince also the private company to agree with analysis. So we are doing this sort of third party in the middle, trying to enabling science on in fields like mobility that we know, everybody of us know that is not is very precise and can be identify user very easily, even without any personal information. If we know where you are and when you are, that's it.
Okay, thank you very much, Roberto. You made some really, really good points there and some suggestions about aggregation level and being an intermediary and the like. I think they're all very valid. And I think your opening remark that we could spend a lot longer talking about many of the many interesting topics that have been raised today, but unfortunately we don't have the time. And so now I'm going to have to bring this panel discussion to a close. Thank you very much for joining us and looking forward to working with you in the future with MobiDataLab, and then I will hand back to our host, Ines, for some closing words. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you, Joseph. Thank you, Santiago, and thank you, Roberto. This is the end of our webinar. I hope you have enjoyed it as much as I did, and I hope you found it useful and insightful. I would also like to thank again our speakers from MobiDataLab, from Molière, and from SoBigData for attending, and also thank you all for staying here and for listening. From our end, we will continue to work to promote this mobility data sharing culture in Europe that we have discussed it here today, and also together with other EU projects such as Molière, SoBigData, and Dataports. If you have any questions, you can always reach out through our contact page, and you can also subscribe our newsletter and follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter for more news on our project and on this topic. Before we go, I would also like to inform you that we will be sending a follow-up email to all of those who have registered for the webinar with more information about the project, about this webinar, and how to reach out. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day. Goodbye, everyone.